there, everyone. As promised, we are going to get this party started on time. I understand that there's going to be some stragglers, some people coming in a little bit later. That's fine. We have got a lot of territory to cover today. And so I just want to make sure that we have time to do all of that. So I'm going to jump right into it. For those of you who don't know me, you probably don't care who I am either way. My name is Jonathan. I am a lead the solutions engineering team here at Qodo. And I am joined today by Naina. Naina, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, thank you. I'm Nana Ndukwe, Developer Relations Lead at Qodo, and really excited to be here for another one of these awesome webinars with you.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we're going to co-host this. I'm going to be kind of taking a lot of the lead on kind of demoing stuff and so forth. Naina has a lot of experience in the software engineering world as well, and she's going to kind of share her commentary or insights or thoughts as we progress. One way or another, this is going to be a fun time. We're going to cover basically the Qodo platform today. And some of you are like, started using the product and you're wondering, what should I be doing with it? Some of you are wondering, should I be using the product and what could I do with it? And so hopefully we'll be able to help all of you out today. Additionally, for those of you who have been using the product, we're going to also be highlighting some new and cool stuff today that we recently released and making sure that you guys are getting a full intro to all of that. But before I dive in and start showing you kind of giving you an overview, what I'd like to start off with just is a few small housekeeping items. First off, you are all on mute by default, so none of you have to worry about coming off mute and like talking to your kids and stuff during the meeting. But also, if you do want to communicate with us, I think the chat is actually disabled by default. At least that's the way it was last month when we did this webinar. So if you want to communicate with us for any reason, you can actually use the Q&A box. So if you haven't already, find that Q&A box and pull that up. And if you can't find it, that's how you would let me know you can't find it. So anyway, if you need to communicate with us, the Q&A box is not just for asking questions that we will answer, but it's also the place to kind of send messages to us like, there we go, I saw a test come through. That is beautiful. In any case, if I have something stuck in my teeth or you can't hear me or whatever the case may be, that is what you would use it for. And also, Naina will also be kind of surfacing some of those questions to me in mid-flight or maybe even responding to them through text. For the most part, we want to respond to most of those questions live because if you're asking the question, it's very likely that someone else has that question. So in any case, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I think would be really important to dive into is giving you guys a little bit of a look at like what the platform is. Some of you might not even be aware of the breadth and the width and the scope of what it is that we're doing at Qodo. And I think that's really kind of critical. In fact, I'm just going to highlight right now, one of the top types of questions we get in these webinars is like, how are you different from XYZ company or this solution or that product? I am not here, by the way. If you want to ask me how I'm different from a certain specific product, that's perfectly fine. For the most part, I am not here to like mudsling at my competition. I respect the competition. I expect that they probably think a lot of the things that we're doing are cool too. And the idea is I really want to highlight how we differentiate. And then also, as part of that, it'll be up to you to decide whether or not the way we differentiate actually matters to you, right? I mean, that's like, great, here's all the ways we're different, but if that doesn't matter to you, then maybe that doesn't matter, right? So we're gonna go ahead and dive in. I'm gonna show you how we're cool, and let's go ahead and talk about this. So first off, we are building a platform. I kind of alluded to this a moment ago. And so we're building tools to span across the SDLC. And some of the tools we're going to be talking about today. In fact, you'll see kind of these tools are listed within the context of kind of a developer flow from planning, writing, testing, reviewing, managing, and so forth. And so we're not only building tools to help solve problems across the SDLC, we are also building tools to meet you or developers where they are in the SDLC, right? So if I'm in the middle of like a research phase or a coding phase, I'm probably going to be using like CodoGen. It sits inside of my IDE. If I'm in the middle of like kind of more like a code review process, I might use Qodo Merge, which is a code review tool. It actually sits inside of GitLab and GitHub and Bitbucket and whatnot. And so we're building, and then we even have a CLI tool that can either be for those of you who are like Vim elitists, or you're using a really weird IDE that a lot of people don't support, or whatever, we have a tool where you can access us through the CLI rather than using a tool like CodoGen. There's a variety of things we're going to be talking about today. At a fundamental level, though, if you look at kind of core capabilities down here, there are things that transcend the platform that are really worth highlighting. The first part of this is Qodo Aware. It's a product within itself. It has its own product manager, its own engineering team, and so forth. But this is a part of our platform that transcends all of our products. And what this does is code base indexing. When we're thinking now, I know there's this whole topic of like vibe coding, whatnot. I am not going to go down that religious war path today. That is not in the cards. But we are focused on enterprise code. We are focused on professional software engineers. And while you could use us for like vibe coding and whatnot, that is just not our claim to fame. Our claim to fame is working with complex code bases. Now, if your code base isn't quite complex yet or whatnot, that's fine too. We're not going to throw you away. But what I mean by that is Qodo Aware is going to index your repositories on a nightly basis, whether it's Bitbucket or GitLab or GitHub. And as part of that, you're going to see during the demo today that whether you're using like code generation tools or code review tools or whatever it might be, we will actually be able to leverage the context of your code base to be able to provide substantially better results. And we'll go more in depth and as we talk about the demo and show you real world use cases of that. Additionally, as part of our platform, we provide you all the latest and greatest models from Gemini, from Anthropic, from OpenAI. We even have XAI support for any of you who really want to try out Grok. I'm still a big Claude 4 Sonnet fan. Many of you might be as well. I kind of set it and forget it, but like the idea is we always want to be able to provide the latest models to our users to make sure that they're getting the best. Because frankly, GPT-5 is probably on the horizon, and maybe that surpasses everything that Claude 4 is doing right now, and everyone wants to make that switch. We want to be there to be able to support you. So let's go ahead then. And with that said, the last piece I just want to note is it's not actually an accident that the left side of this is blue and the right side of this is red. It is kind of using a bit of a blue team, red team type of color scheme, and that's intentional. Throughout our platform, what you're going to find is we build tools to both help to kind of create things, hopefully following your best practices and design patterns. And then also we help to kind of validate things through testing and code reviews and so forth. And yes, there will be a recording for this session afterwards for all of you. So yes, if you're thinking I'm already bored and I want to skip all this preamble, you are welcome to do so. So let's dive in now. I am going to actually flip over to Excalidraw for just a second here, and I just want to highlight for you guys the flow of this. So we're going to be talking about our tools from the perspective of like researching and understanding code, planning, writing, testing, and reviewing. If there's other use cases or phases of the development process you guys want to see me cover during the demo today, feel free to pop into the chat. We'll cover that. In fact, I know that many of us like enjoyed choose your own adventure novels as kids. This is your chance as an adult to be a part of your own choose your own adventure novel. So I am happy to go off script and talk about things that you guys are interested in. So pop it into the Q&A panel. Happy to be able to talk about that. Now, to get started, I'm going to be diving into CodoGen first. And as part of this, if any of you are not aware of this, if you've been living under a rock in the AI world, context is king. And especially when we're talking about like large enterprise code bases, which again is our claim to fame, being able to leverage context, the full breadth of that, to be able to give you quality code suggestions, to help you understand code, to help plan code, to test code, to review code, it requires a lot of context. So part of this is going to be local context. This is going to be, I have a project clone locally on my laptop, and I want to use that as context. Great, we do that. How about remote code in docs and so forth? So this is a scenario where I am working on a project locally. Maybe I'm a front-end developer, and I need to be aware of back-end APIs, or authentication schemes, or I am working on one microservice that communicates with another microservice. Any sort of remote code in the code base is really going to be critical to that as well. Many of you have been there, right? You understand, like, yeah, the AI gave me crappy results because it wasn't aware of how the rest of my code base actually worked together. Additionally, though, there's other places that context can come from. We'll talk a bit about how you can use MCP servers to be able to pull in additional context from other resources. There is an Atlassian MCP server that can pull in like Jira tickets or Confluence pages, or a Jira or Atlassian or a MCP server for GitHub that can pull in the latest PRs and things like that. Additionally, your organization is going to have best practices that you guys are to follow. And this is not just organizational practices, there's even team level practices or project or repo level practices. And how do we incorporate that into this? And then lastly, any additional instructions you want to provide us, we're going to talk about all of those things. So let's go ahead and dive in and show you how it all works together. So I'm going to switch over to my IDE. By the way, I am going to be using VS Code for the IDE today. I had to pick a IDE to use. I can't demo all IDEs, but I do want to highlight that while I am choosing VS Code, we support all the JetBrains IDEs. We support Visual Studio. If you happen to have another IDE that you're curious about support for, post it in the Q&A. For a lot of those other ones, like if you're someone who's like still using Eclipse or you're using Vim, or maybe you're using Xcode. While we don't have explicit IDE support today for those, this is where our Qodo command product, which actually works within the CLI, could actually help you out. And we'll talk about that today as well. So that said, the experience that you're going to encounter across IDEs is pretty much exactly the same. And the first part I want to talk about is how you would use our product. In fact, by the way, if any of you want to follow along today and you want to spin up a copy, you can actually just go into your respective marketplaces, whether it's JetBrains or VS Code or Visual Studio. You can just search for Qodo and you can find Qodo Gen in there. Feel free to install it, right? You can follow along, do some of the things that I'm doing if you don't already have it installed. I'm happy to be able to work with you on that. So let's go ahead though and dive in and show you how the product actually works. I am using a project right here that happens to be a Python backend and a TypeScript React front end. It's actually a very popular repo out there nowadays called Screenshot to Code. You can look it up on GitHub. It's like 50,000 stars or something like that on it. In any case, we support all the major languages just fine, but again, I had to pick something to work with today. So let's go ahead and show you how we would use this. So we're all now junior devs or brand new devs at this company that has this screenshot to code project. And one of the first things that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to understand a little bit more about this project. Now, as part of this, what you're going to find is down here, we have these different kind of modes, if you will. Think of modes as kind of like personas that you interact with. And so I'm going to actually use a mode here called ask. And this is, as the name implies, like I am simply just trying to understand how any of this works or fits together. So maybe as part of this, think about like I'm new to a project, or maybe I'm not new to the project, but I'm working with a piece of code that I have not worked with before. Asks acts as kind of like a senior dev to help you to piece together like what's actually going on here. And so I can come in here and say like, how is I'm being I like how I'm fixing typos for AI. It doesn't really care. But in any case, how is authentication implemented in this project? Now it's going to go through and start to gather a lot of that context for me. And you'll see that it's actually using tools behind the scenes to be able to facilitate this. It's actually doing some searches behind the scenes to kind of understand the code base. And it's starting to go ahead and read files and so forth. And it's gathering that information and so that it can kind of give me the information I need. So it ended up doing like say 4 different like kind of API calls to be able to go through and gather the information and then ultimately produce a result for me. So now this has helped me to get up a little bit more up to speed. Now, as part of this, of course, it's now giving me some details. It's actually showing me like here's a file that I might want to note. and so forth. From here, I could drill in further. This is all a threaded conversation, as you would expect. I can ask follow-up questions to drill in further to understand how these different pieces are working, and maybe ask it to create a mermaid diagram for me, whatever it is that I really need to be able to continue that conversation. So that's the first part, right? A lot of us, and probably one of the most popular types of functions we see in how users are actually using our product across enterprises, is that they're using us to kind of help understand code bases that they're working with. I actually, for yourself, Nate, I mean, do you observe, like, when you're thinking about like using this kind of like ask type of mode, I mean, are there certain examples that you've seen out in the wild or you personally that come to mind?
Yeah, usually like when I'm trying to understand a new code base, especially when I'm thinking about back in the days of like full-time engineering and like joining a new team and just trying to make sense of all the different projects. I definitely like to know the flow of everything. There's a bunch of different files that are, organized a specific way, but how is everything actually connected? I feel like
Mm.
getting that kind of explanation really helps to put the different pieces together of all the files and the tools that are used.
That's awesome. That's a great example. In fact, the one thing I might highlight off of that, though, is this is maybe a simple example, right? I've got the front end and the back end all in one repo and whatnot. And
Mhm.
maybe some of you are actually running mono repos where everything is just kind of in this big, like huge repo with all the different services and so forth. And that works too, I guess. Even though a lot of times you might not be cloning that entire mono repo locally, you might be cloning pieces of it that you're working on. But additionally, like, what about those scenarios where what you're describing, Nanny, you're trying to understand if all these pieces work together? A great example of this would actually be internally. Like, what you're looking at here, this like VS Code plugin or our JetBrains plugin, those are different repos. And then those repos, like those projects, they're communicating with a backend service that's in yet another repo, right? And so it's like when I'm trying to piece all that together, I think that actually is probably maybe even a scenario where I think this whole Codo aware piece could be highly relevant. I mean, you're nodding, so I'm guessing that's a scenario you might have seen before.
Yeah, I mean, think about how long it really takes to do all of this deep diving on your own. The hours that it takes, or even, I mean, like using the search bar to figure out, okay, how many places does this function exist? How many different files? Like, how far back does this go? I think when, I guess, AI is working on your behalf to put all those pieces together to give you that proper context, it's really a huge time saver.
So let's talk about that actually. Like, let's pretend for a moment that the project I'm working on right now is a front end service or a client, like our plugin is, or whatever. Like, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to actually invoke the Codo Aware icon. This is actually new with 1.6. And any of you who are working with an enterprise deployment of our product will have a index of your code base that we do on a nightly basis, as indicated earlier. And so I'm going to come in here. I'm going to use this ask function that's part of this. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and you can one of the cool things that you can note here is that when you're asking questions, if you want to focus on certain pieces of your code, whether it's like the project you have locally or maybe even specific repositories, I can use this as a search box. So I'm going to go ahead and type in like pet clinic, which is a repo that we have in our demo environment. And I'm going to say, in fact, I might even go ahead and say like, let's see, say in the pet clinic repo, what API endpoints are available for managing visits? Because it's a pet clinic repo, right? And as part of this, actually, let me go ahead and open a new thread so it's not tainted here.
Is that the original, like the popular pet clinic? I think
It
I've
is the Java project.
yes, yes. I think I
It
built
is. It's the classic pet
that.
clinic repo. We
That's
forked it for
amazing.
fun. And so like in any case, what API endpoints are available for managing visits? And so, oh my goodness, what's going on here? It's like not working for me. I don't know. I guess maybe I broke it. Can I select it from here?
So you clicked
Pulling
on
up.
it and then you're asking a question.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens now.
So it's like we might have to abandon part of the demo, everybody. What API endpoints are available for managing visits? I just happen to know that's a part of the API here, um, and it's failing. Oh, that's really weird. So in any case, it is not working, everybody. I have officially failed you. Um, and I don't know why that's not working. But in any case, the idea is like this would allow me to be able to get quick responses from like the broader code base. And this is a lot of different scenarios. APIs is one example, or backend connecting to a backend service is another example. But there's other examples. Like we work with a lot of organizations where like I have an internal component library that I should be using. And so like there's all sorts of scenarios where I would want to go ahead and pull in that context to be used in a as part of this, and it allows me to do that without having to go and actually clone that repository locally. And the best part about this is the part that's killing me inside that I'm not able to show you, is those responses are like near instantaneous. Now, why is that significant? Well, for a moment ago, when we were going ahead and showing you like how this grabs context, this took like half a minute to go through and parse through the files and understand the code base, and then finally get me a response. So first off, it's a near instantaneous response. So that's important. The second part of this, there is a whole debacle out in the industry right now. I'm not going to mention names, but like with whole like credits, right? The whole credit problem with AI vendors, like you're limited to so many credits per month and so forth. It's a single credit to go ahead and do a single API call to go ahead to a database that goes and pulls this information versus doing like 5, 7, sometimes 10 API calls to be able to go through and gather all this information across a project or whatnot. It saves you a ton of time, a ton of credits, and then the best part is it increases the quality of your code because it's able to leverage that context. So anyway, I apologize I wasn't able to demo it. Forgive me, everybody. We'll figure that out for next month's webinar. But in any case, let's move along.
Someone mentioned about they can't see the fourth
Yeah,
icon.
he
Is
says he.
this
Yeah.
the latest?
So
Is
that
it?
is true. You are
Okay.
not going to see the fourth icon here if you are not set up with Qodo Aware on your license or on your subscription. So if you don't see it, you're not missing out on much. It probably just means you're not on a enterprise agreement or deployment that would have this enabled. So reach out to sales. We'll work with you, try to get that figured out. Um, the last part, though, that I want to note, I want to wrap up on two fundamental pieces here for each of you. One piece going back to personas. I mentioned about the ask persona. We're on that right now. I'm going to also highlight a couple of other ones. So, code. Code is basically, and I'm going to say this like half joking, I'm half serious, half joking. Code is like your overeager junior developer who's maybe had a few too many espressos. And what I mean by that is it's basically going to go to town. You ask it, like, I want to code something, and it's going to go ahead and give you all these code suggestions. It's awesome in that regard. However, any of you who have worked with a junior developer knows you need to give good, clear expectations and instructions and plans to that junior dev if you want them to come away with a successful output. So this is where ask comes in as kind of like your senior dev. And then also, more importantly, a default mode that you're going to see is plan. This is where you would go in and you would ask questions like create a plan for actually, let's go ahead and do this. I would go ahead and because this uses LLMs and whatnot, create a plan for supporting we'll say what's a new AI that we should oh Grok supporting Grok in this project. I'll actually be more explicit supporting the Grok LLM in this project. And no question mark. So the idea here is create a plan. Oh my goodness, what's going on here? Create a plan for supporting Grok LM in this project. There is something severely broken going on here, guys. Yeah, something is just completely borked. I have no idea, guys. That is new to me. I prepared for this.
Do you
This
think that
environment was working 2 seconds ago.
maybe this could be restarted or uninstalled and
Yeah,
installed
let me
again?
go ahead and just restart the IDE real quick. And we'll get that going. While we're restarting it, we won't waste any time because again, we've got a lot to cover. What I want to highlight here, and the reason I'm kind of showing you plan, is it's more kind of like a general AI usage hygiene thing. Some of you like I guess the difference between like vibe coding and viable coding is really about like not forgetting the things that we've known for years. In fact, a lot of us vibe coded before vibe coding was a thing, before Copilot, GitHub Copilot existed, and before Gen AI existed, right? We would like on a weekend we'd say like, "Hey, I got a great idea for a web app," and you dive into it and you start creating a prototype, and you would do that without like a plan, and then you would find yourself going back and refactoring things and fixing things and adding in things you hadn't planned for and so forth. This is the same thing with AI, right? And so if we start with a plan, and we were talking a moment ago, I'm going to go ahead and share out my screen and see if this has fixed the issue. If we start with creating a plan, what we found is that, like, even if you use AI to help you create the plan, is that the code generated by AI is oftentimes about 40% more effective or higher quality or more accepted than if you just went in and said, like, go ahead and do this thing for me. And it makes sense, right? Because if you went ahead to a junior dev and said, go ahead and do this thing with very little instruction, it wouldn't get the job done very well. So this is not just a Qodo thing, this is in general. Now, what I want to highlight though, and again, I'm going to probably skip this part because of the earlier and the time lost, but we have this deep research function as part of Qodo Aware. And what this does is this isn't going to give like instant responses. This is going to take a little bit more time. It might take a minute or two to kind of really think through code and help to create a plan. And the significance of that is we have tested this functionality in creating plans for code, not just with our product, but with many other competing products. And we've found that through using Qodo Aware with even other products, the quality of the AI code generated is significantly better than without it. And so I just wanted to highlight that. And you'll be seeing some benchmarks coming out for that probably later this month or even early September. We're going to be posting all our findings on that. But I'm going to go ahead and do one last time here and create a plan to add Grok support for LLMs. And we'll cross our fingers and pray. It's broken. That's lovely, guys. So let's go ahead then. And we've talked a lot about kind of the code generation piece. We've talked about coming in here. And in fact, I haven't talked about the code generation piece as much, where you can use this to actually ask it to generate code pieces you're looking for. But again, I highly emphasize using ask and plan, and then being able to go ahead and use plans to be able to help create code solutions. And this could be for anything from writing documentation to fixing bugs, to helping create plans for refactoring. You will also notice, by the way, because this is a brand new feature, I'd also like to highlight that you have the ability to be able to create your own modes. I was working with a financial services company earlier this week, where I was working with their QA engineering team. As you imagine, they're not your traditional software developers. And what we did was we actually created, I can show you an example of this, a test automation specialist persona. And their whole entire purpose as a team, as QA engineers, is actually to create tests to automate more things so that they're having to do less manual testing. And so we created a whole mode for them that was focused on doing exactly those types of things. And so you're not obligated to come in here and create this, but if you happen to be more of a power user or a tech lead who wants to create these things that you could share with a broader team, this is a very powerful functionality where you're effectively able to overwrite the system prompt to make it act in a way that you're specifically looking for it to do. So very powerful and something that's worth noting. I know someone's commenting here and they're saying, I use Qodo to generate code and it works really well. It's weird that these kind of failures in a live showcase. I know, right? I'm feeling the same way. It is our demo environment, and so maybe something is a little wry there. So, again, my apologies for any of that.
The demo
Um,
gods just weren't on our sides with that one, but we pushed forward.
Exactly. The demo gods. I mean, you guys are software engineers, right? You've had the demo gods fail you when you're doing internal demos of new things you're working on and building. I do want to highlight one last thing, though, that you guys will find incredibly valuable. It's a new feature. It's called workflows. And frankly, what I'm looking out in the market today, besides the ability to kind of effectively rewrite the system prompt with what is modes, we also, another thing that I feel is a differentiator for us is this whole workflows piece. Now, we have a lot of workflows out of the box. Just to give you an example, like unit test or review. These are very powerful functions where I can come in here and I can write a slash command like slash unit test and run that. Hey, it's working, guys. What this is going to do is use a pre-built workflow to go and help me create unit tests for my code. And if I go in here and I take a look at this, you can even view what that workflow is. It's got very clear steps on how it wants to approach things. I could even go in and edit these steps to customize it to how I want to operate. The cool part about this is, again, more of a power user type of thing, maybe more of a tech lead type of thing. I can even create my own workflows. Someone earlier in chat actually was mentioning, like, hey, I have this kind of type of task that I like to do over and over again. Is there a way to save those types of things? Yeah, that's what workflows is for. In fact, I had a scenario here. I created, actually, this one right here is one I created called end-to-end tests. And this was a scenario where I wanted to create UI tests for different things I was working on. And it was actually very project based. I actually said, review the app running at this URL, this port number. I'd actually have this Docker container running and it was accessible at this particular URL. And then I would actually have it using automatically our Playwright MCP that would go ahead and screenshot things and so forth and be able to test things. And then I'd have it create the tests, I'd have it run the tests, and then I'd even actually have it go through and fix tests if anything didn't seem like it was working and then rerun the tests appropriately. And this is all built in now. I don't have to retell it to do these things. And in fact, what we're doing here is we're making it possible so that if you create something that's cool, you can go ahead and actually export this and have a colleague import this so that they can go ahead and use this. You can actually share these with your colleagues and be able to do really cool and powerful things. And this is just another way to be able to I guess it takes me back to a classic learning Python book called Automate the Boring Stuff, right? This is a way that rather than me having to go off and write Python scripts to automate a lot of the crap that I have to do, I'm able to go ahead and just go ahead and have AI automate those things in human readable English. So I just wanted to highlight this is a brand new thing. Highly recommend playing with it. It's a lot of fun. I've been geeking out over it. And so in any case, you can see, by the way, it's really going to town. It's going through and it's going through and understanding my code. It's reading files, it's understanding dependencies, it's finding existing test files, and now it's going through and figuring out like what sort of tests am I missing? What's the existing test suite look like? What behaviors in the code is not being covered? And it's going through and systematically doing those things. And the end result here is going to be that it actually gives me proposed to me all the tests that I probably need to increase my code coverage or to cover my behaviors. So anyway, we're not going to sit here and let it go through all of that today. We have other things we need to cover. But are there any other questions or topics that have come up in chat, Nana, that we should
Yeah.
cover before we move along?
Yeah, there's some good questions. One is about how can we train ourselves on the best prompts to get the best results? That I think this is an awesome question because the way that you started it was like first we need to plan,
Mhm.
actually starting at the beginning of the software life cycle. So it's like how do we actually leverage that to the best of our abilities with prompting?
Great. So the first thing I'm going to say is this. we try to, some of this stuff I talked about, again, I clearly labeled as power user features. And why did I do that? Many of you who are getting started, you don't want to sit and like read the documentation. You don't want to tinker with the features. You just want to see, can it do something cool for me? Right. And so for that, again, when you're looking at kind of like a prompting perspective, like a system prompt, we have code, ask, and plan right out of the box because we just want to make it easy for you to be able to like just get started, get going on things. Your ability to go ahead and create your own like prompts and so forth, system level prompts, that's really completely up to you. And so like I encourage you just if you're just getting started, use those. Very similarly, if you're looking for kind of getting started types of like workflows, which are effectively prompts within themselves,
Mhm.
we have a lot of the out of the box things, everything from like creating docs, generating best practices, creating unit tests, doing code reviews, all of that's built in. Now, if you wanted to like take that a step further and you're finding that like, hey, I'm frequently in plan, and as part of plan, I instruct it to actually act in a particular way because of how I like to think, how I like to do things. I encourage you either create a clone of the plan, create a clone of the plan prompt and modify it do to kind of tailor it to how you operate. And that's again, that's kind of like more forward thinking as you've been using it for a while and you discover like, hey, I actually want like it to work more like XYZ. You can tailor it from there rather than starting from scratch. Likewise, the AI community is pretty fantastic. Like, there is like subreddits and so forth. I subscribe to every morning. I kind of read what people are doing out in the AI world, and people have all sorts of things that they discover in kind of the AI community things. We're actually working internally on kind of leveraging that expertise. Our own engineering teams are using this, are always iterating on practices and how to best use this. And as they discover these new and better ways of doing things and prompting and so forth, we're actually trying to build that into the product so that you guys don't have to think about it as much. Because prompting is its own like art and science within itself. And so I encourage you guys to learn about it. I think it's the future of AI coding. But at the same time, if you're new to this, we don't want you to feel like you're obligated to have to go down that whole path. And we want to have a good out of the box experience. So hopefully that wasn't too long winded.
No, I think that's great actually in the way that it ties into workflows. I'm thinking about if I don't know exactly where to get started, I think one of the best places is recognizing any patterns in your development process that could then be turned into a workflow that could be handled. So it's not like you're
Yeah.
having to actually change anything about what you're doing or have to be an expert. It's just being able to recognize some patterns in your own work.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little bit of introspection, I guess you could say. It's one of those things like I'll be honest with you, it forces me to think differently. Like before I'd be just like I might see someone else. Actually, what happens is I see someone else do something cool. I'm like, oh crap, you're right. I should have probably created a workflow for that. Like it's like I find myself going down the same paths over and over again when I'm using AI. And so anyway, I do want to highlight something though. For any of you who are like senior engineers, experienced engineers, and you're thinking to yourself that you're thinking to yourself like I don't need AI to code for me. That is perfectly fine. Use AI for all the other pieces. Help it to think through things, help it to plan. Use it as a consultant. Say like, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Are there any here's my plan I'm thinking. Is there anything that you think I might be missing or overlooking?" Use it for code reviews. Not only in your IDE where you're like, "Hey, I want to run the code review workflow." To go ahead and review the code changes to see if there's things that I missed, but also use it. In fact, we're going to move now over to Qodo merge and talk about code reviews inside of your Git provider and how we can help with that as well.
Oh, I think I was just going to step in to say I think that almost answers some what a question that someone had about how can I balance and continuously improve my programming skills without becoming overly dependent on AI assistance. And I think what you said,
Mm.
treating it like a consultant, like is there something I'm missing here? So you're giving yourself an opportunity to come up with your own ideas and approaches, and then you can bounce the ideas off of AI. That way, it can stay original and authentic, and there's room for improvement, based on the review.
Yeah, I mean, another quick example of this. We've all been there, right? You get this Jira ticket that's like kind of weak sauce, I think you could call it. And you're just like, dude, like your acceptance criteria is like very vague and like and I'm not sure how to turn this into a like a spec or a design because I and so like you could easily come in here and you could paste in whether it's a like a acceptance criteria from a Jira ticket, or maybe it's a full-blown PRD or spec that someone else created. You could paste it in here and say like, what am I not thinking about? What other things could I be like doing here to improve this? And when you have the code right here, I mean, I'm in the project. When you have that code here, and it can actually look through that code in conjunction with the context you're providing it, it can always enhance what it is that you're getting. And so, again, use it as a consultant, use it as an extra pair of eyes, and you're not foregoing your expertise. What you're doing is you're actually learning, and it sometimes will point out things that with an extra set of eyes that sometimes you just didn't think of because we're human and we don't always think of everything. So anyway, I do have to move along because we've got about 20 minutes left. I want to move into code reviews real quick, but I just want to highlight that like other things we haven't covered yet in the from the Qodo Gens piece, you can use this for doing generating tests. I did kind of highlight that a little bit for generating documentation. And the reason I cover those things is because if you're thinking about the crap that sometimes as engineers we don't like to do, right? The things that just don't bring us life satisfaction, it's oftentimes documentation, tests, and code reviews. And so while we can do a whole lot more and help out and help you to think things at a higher, deeper level, create good plans, I do want to highlight that those are some major things. If you're looking for some easy, low-hanging fruit, those are some things that we can do. So let me go ahead without further ado, and let me go ahead and stop sharing this, and I'm going to flip over to I'm gonna flip over to GitHub actually. Again, I had to use an initial Git provider here. We do support GitLab and Bitbucket, but I had to pick one to use. And since the majority of people tend to be on GitHub, I do want to use that as an example. So let's go ahead and share this out. And so the first part about this, what's really cool about our Qodo merge tool, which is our code review tool, is like, in fact, some of you, by the way, you might already be using a tool like a cursor or a copilot or something like that. And you're thinking, okay, CodoGen looks great. But maybe I'm kind of comfortable in using the tool I'm already using. And you're thinking like maybe it looks like it could add value, but the low-hanging fruit for a lot of people is like, okay, with code generation in my team, we have now increased the amount of PR throughput that's happening. In fact, not just PR throughput from the number of PRs, but sometimes the lines of code being generated by AI is a little bit excessive as well. And that's a lot for us to get through from a code review perspective. And so we've created a tool here that fits right into your workflow. What's cool about this is you don't have to think about using it. When you create a new PR, what's going to happen is it's automatically going to add comments on that PR with analytics to help you to understand things that you should be looking at, fixing, or otherwise. So let's walk through that together. Pretend that I just created a PR, and as part of that PR description, one of the things that you're going to see here is that you can, of course, provide your own description. In fact, a lot of times you'll post like a link to a Jira ticket or something. I didn't do anything different here. But to go off of that, the first thing that we do is we actually append the user's description with our own context. So what we do is we break down all of the code changes. In this case, by the way, this is kind of a sizable PR, probably not recommended, but it's a few hundred lines of code. And so in any case, what we do is for the code reviewer, we actually break down all of the changes into a nice, concise description. We give a walkthrough diagram of all of the code changes. And then lastly, we also provide a file walkthrough. And so as part of that, the idea here is we give you a play-by-play of all of those changes to help you get up to speed. Now, the cool part about this is also living documentation. Throughout the code review process, new commits will be submitted, and we actually update our documentation of the PR automatically as those new commits come in, and it makes it so, again, living documentation. Wonderful. It's great. Now, where we start to get a little bit more interesting is the PR reviewer guide. As the name implies, it is per the PR reviewer, but I'm going to actually give you like a secret kind of, I guess like a dark secret here, guys. While it's kind of directed toward the PR reviewer, I'm going to say it's secretly geared towards the code author. The reality is, within about a minute, we're talking like within 60 seconds of creating a PR, the first person who's going to get notified about this comment is actually the person who wrote the code. And what's going to happen is they're going to get feedback on their PR within a minute. Now, you guys tell me, right? And maybe you don't tell me. You're going to clutter up the Q&A box. But like, you think for a moment, like, how long does it typically take you to get feedback on a PR that you create? Maybe a couple of hours, maybe a couple of days sometimes, right? It really depends on the team, on the project, on the time zones that you're all trying to work in. And so within a minute, I am getting feedback on this. And now what I'm able to do is I'm able to do this. One, ticket compliance analysis. It's actually going to go and connect up with Jira, Linear, GitHub issues, whatever it is that you're using for a ticketing system. And it's going to go ahead and pull up what the acceptance criteria or requirements are in that ticket, whatever we can find. We understand that not all tickets are created equal, but whatever we can find, we're going to then take that and we're going to look at the code changes and we're going to figure out, are the code changes actually satisfying what's laid out in the ticket? And so we're going to say, here's the compliant things. Here's the non-compliant things. We're going to point out if there's areas that we're unsure of, because this happens, right? Sometimes with AI, we're going to look at this and go, we're not entirely sure if the code changes do satisfy what's being mentioned here in this Jira ticket. And we'll say that, right? We'll call out for further human verification. But going beyond that, we also point out recommended areas for review. So we're saying here there's a risk. There's a file I/O risk here. So without error handling or file locking, this could cause issues under high load or concurrent access. That's a great type of suggestion. Or how about this? Using Qodo Aware, we actually look at the broader context. We don't just look at the code changes. We're looking at the broader repo. And from here, we're able to see like that there's, again, some file IO type of things that could be at risk here. We'll also point out things like if there's code duplication in other parts of the code base, like there's a utility function you should be using, or if you're deviating from current design patterns or whatnot. We'll point those things out by using that broader context. The last thing that, oh, what's
This
that,
is,
Nina?
no, I was just like, wow, this is awesome because these are the kind of things that you would find out too late, right? It's
Yeah.
like able to catch it here and described in this detail. It gets you, I don't know. I think it's awesome that it would catch it this early on, and also that it's taking note of performance issues, which is a very unique, and like people spend in their engineering career, some people spend years specializing in performance specifically, and so for it to provide this info, I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, a fun thought, by the way. If any of you do evaluate this or get it up and running, like try running this against older PRs that were known to have introduced an issue in the past, right? And seeing if we would have caught what you would have that what you end up had to going back and fix, right? It's a fun little experiment. But there is another thought here too. We have a feature. It can be enabled. You just put it into a config file. It's something you're in control of, where we actually can detect like in this case, I mentioned a few hundred lines of code changed. This is a cool new feature here where we actually detect if there's multiple PR themes. So like in other words, this is pointing out like, dude, you should have broken this up into multiple PRs rather than trying to do it all in one. How many of you code reviewers out there would think like, oh, thank heavens, someone else is going to say it? And so like this will actually go through and break down for you like, hey, this is one theme. You should have actually, here's the files. You should actually break this out into a separate PR. And we can provide not just bugs, not just performance risks, not just breaking down these sorts of PRs, but we can also point out to you if there's any security concerns. Now, we don't have any examples in this particular PR, but this is where we'll point out things like someone left a token in their code, or point out like a SQL injection risk or a cross-site scripting risk or those types of things. And so anyway, like not only will we do this, and I do want to go ahead and like talk about one last thing and then I'll pause for questions, is because we've got about 10 minutes. I want to wrap up with other questions, things that you guys felt I missed. is the code suggestions part. So this is where we get down to the weeds of like actually how to fix or remedy some of these things. So this whole concurrent file access race condition, like there's a couple of race conditions here, as you would imagine, based on this file IO risks we saw up here. We'll actually go in and show you exactly what it is we recommend you change. We'll give you the diff. Now, you could go back to your IDE and make these changes, but if you like the changes as is right here that we're suggesting, you could just go ahead and check a box and apply those suggestions. We actually take you into a little bit of a flow where we will actually give you a committable code suggestion, and then you could go ahead and either negotiate with the AI on how you want to implement it, or just go ahead and commit it. And you could all do that within your IDE. I think where this is most significant is there are many cases where we're making good suggestions, but it's one of those good suggestions where like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but if you're going to make me go back to my IDE and create a new commit, I'm just not going to invest the time. I've done user interviews on this. It happens, right? They're like, I get it. And so like if it's that easy to just go check a box and commit it right through here, like it's a stupid thing sometimes like a typo or another type of like thing that would be kind of best practices related. Just check the box and go ahead and implement it right here. Either way, whether you do it through here or you go back to your IDE and fix it because you want to fix it in like a different type of way, we will detect that you fixed it in a subsequent commit. We will mark it as fixed. In fact, you can see this one is crossed out right here. We will mark it as fixed. And we will also track it in our backend metrics because we actually have dashboards that track how often suggestions are being implemented. We track like the severity of the types of questions that suggestions that are being implemented. And so your leadership can get entire metrics around these sorts of things on how successful the product is being within code reviews. So we are down to the last 5 or 10 minutes. I've walked you through Qodo Gen with kind of asking, planning, coding, workflows, personas. I've talked about code reviews and talked about how, frankly, we can be the first line of defense. We can offload your senior engineers by being the first people to come in and tell that developer, here's some things should be thinking about fixing and whatnot, so they can hopefully fix those things and offload your senior engineers, make their lives easier. But I want to see like what other things am I missing, guys? What other things are you hoping that we would cover or we can do? Because a lot of times we can do it. It's just it's a very robust platform as you've seen. So what have we got, Nana? What other questions are we or that we've got going on that haven't been
There
tackled?
are a lot of questions. There's a question about Unity. How does Codo compare to Unity's built-in AI, and how good is it at writing a basic game in Unity? That's not something I'm not in the game developer world, so I'm really curious if you have any perspective on that.
Yeah, I'm not either, actually. I mean, so it sounds like Unity has its own built-in AI that you guys like to use. I mean, if you're talking about like a separate IDE or whatnot, because I haven't done the game development thing. Actually, I have a bit. Like I've used Godot, which is pretty fantastic, and it has its own separate IDE. So of course we wouldn't have a plugin to that. What I would recommend, we actually have a tool. It is called Qodo Command. And in fact, you might actually, I just want to, I think if I Google this, in fact, what you might do, what I'm going to encourage you to do, I'm gonna do a cop out here, guys. I'm going to ask you to go to here, docs.qodo.ai. There's a Qodo command page here, and it's as simple as going in and doing this npm command here to install Qodo command. And in fact, I don't know if you want to just post that into chat for them,
Yeah,
Nana.
will do.
And it's as simple as going in and installing it this way. And then you have a full CLI version of basically like Qodo Gen. And so you can go ahead and use it either in a web mode, kind of like what you were seeing where there's an interface. You could use it in a completely CLI based mode where you can chat with it in a command line interface, maybe even right within the IDE that you're in, or in a separate terminal window. And then you can also use it in a completely headless mode where it can actually respond to webhooks. You could integrate it with CI processes. And so the idea is like this might be your solution for doing those sorts of things, but I'd be happy to work with you offline on ways that you could implement it in such a way. We didn't get to talk about it a lot today, but something, again, another way that we can meet developers where they are, whether it's in an IDE, in a CLI like this, or even in their Git provider. What's next?
There are a couple people that are actually asking about how do you run this PR review before a PR? Issues are surfaced earlier. Another question similar. How do you fix the stuff ahead of time before giving it to others for review?
So there's two scenarios where this comes up. One scenario is where like I've got a developer who says like, "Dude, can you not air my dirty laundry in front of everybody?" And the other is where you've just got someone who's just being realistic and like, "Hey, how can I shift left a little bit on this? How about we just reduce the PR noise and like we just kind of catch this in a different phase?" There's two different ways that we can be doing this. One way is like, most solutions nowadays for Git providers, you can do some form of like a draft mode, like GitHub has it and whatnot. You can run like do a draft PR and have it run in those sorts of scenarios and catch those things before you publish the PR. That's one, right? The other is we have those code review tools right within our IDE extension. So I encourage you, if you're in that first category of like, dude, can I just like catch these things before the PR process? Like, use the code review workflow. We actually have an MCP server that's built into our products, into Qodo Command and into Qodo Gen that does code reviews, much like Qodo Merge does, but does it in the IDE because it's a platform. We can actually use the Qodo Merge backend and pull that power, that functionality right into the IDE, and then and do the code reviews there. So like there's a couple of options that are available to you. Of course, if that doesn't meet your needs, let me know. There's a lot of ways we could solve that, but those are the two primary: draft PRs or actually just doing the code reviews right within the IDE to begin with. And either one of those things should be able to solve your problem. So what's next?
Another question, does the apply chat feature work with Azure DevOps as well? That's an interesting question.
Great question. So we don't have explicit Azure DevOps support today for our premium product. There is a open source project out there. It's called PR-agent. You can Google it. It is on GitHub. It's actually the open source version of our product. It's watered down in a lot of ways. A lot of the valuable, awesome features that I showed you during this demo today, you're not going to have access to, but you will have access to the basics. And so what I mean by that is you would be able to if you input your own API key and whatnot for Claude or OpenAI and whatnot, you would be able to get access to like the bare minimum features for Azure DevOps, and you could do that. However, I would also encourage you to engage with us. Send a message to our team, to our company, and say like, "Hey, I want Azure DevOps support," and let us know because that's also what's going to drive feature development. There are some things that we are working on I mean, we do get occasional things for like Garrett support or for people who are still on Perforce. So if you're in any of those scenarios, don't think that we can't help you. We're very agile as a company, and we would love to hear from you and see what we can do to get you the support that you need. What's next?
Can we test out CodoGen, Codo PR agent before buying any tokens?
The Sorry, can we test out what
And
product?
PR agent.
Oh, okay. So PR agent or open source repo is completely open source, right? Like you deploy it, you provide the API tokens, things like that. However, I encourage you to just use our. So for those of you who aren't aware, PR Agent is the open source offering for Qodo Merge explicitly. Qodo Merge, however, if you go and set up an evaluation. In fact, if you go to let's see, Qodo.ai/get started, go here and we will give you a free out of the box license to use Codo Merge on us. In fact, if you look at kind of the way we do pricing, our developer tier is basically like our full blown tier, except it has more limited credits. So go in there. If you want to test it out for Qodo Merge, for Qodo Gen, any of our products, we are not watering down our developer product. We simply limit the amount of usage you can get out of it within a month. We want to give you that full experience. Then if you decide like, hey, this is something we want to more fully evaluate for our team or whatnot, we could hook you up with a trial license for doing like teams or enterprise or whatever you feel it is we would need. I think that's another critical piece. On that same note, um, what I do want to highlight, if any of you are in the enterprise space, where you feel like we work with customers even to the highest level of security where they need something like air gapped, like their government or government contractor or high security, or where they don't necessarily need an air gap, but hey, my GitLab or my GitHub is hosted behind my firewall. I am not opening up a port in my firewall for code base indexing or code reviews. I need to deploy that backend service behind our firewall. We even provide that. So like that's not something you're going to get from like a trial license. That's something engage with us and we will be able to actually work on a deployment that would be able to satisfy your needs. We will also note that in some cases in the enterprise level, they don't want to use our models. They want to use the models that they already have agreements with Anthropic and OpenAI. Maybe they've negotiated terms and privacy and other things like that. In those sorts of deployment models, we can actually provide our products and allow the customer to use their own API. So I just want to emphasize here, like we're highly flexible in how this can be deployed depending on security needs, other things like that. And then for those of you who just want to get this up and going and you want to test this out, we also make that really easy for you too. So other questions?
This one, uh, what about Coda Aware? Can we try this out or is it enterprise only? I think
So,
that was mentioned.
yeah,
Yeah.
Qodo Aware is enterprise only. I know I hyped that up a lot today, so I hope that's not of a downer for any of you guys. If you're thinking like, oh, I'm more of a Teams type of license, but like I really want to use Qodo Aware. However, I would encourage you. Let's explore together whether or not an enterprise deployment would work for you guys. We do enterprise deployments for somewhat smaller organizations. It's just a matter of kind of figuring out what makes best sense. So let's work with you guys if you feel like you need Codo Aware, but you feel like you're a smaller organization, like we're talking like 50 devs, like we could probably still do an enterprise deployment for you, but let's figure that out together.
One last question, I think. Well, I don't want to speak too soon before another one pops up from Nathan. Does Codo also provide percentage of code that is covered in unit test and vulnerabilities, similar to SonarQube? I'm not, I don't actually know how to interpret this question.
Yeah. So we do not. So it's fascinating though. Like out of the box, it is not something that we natively do. However, I was working on an open source Python project recently, where as part of that project's dependencies, they had a PyTest library. It's PyTest-cov, which is a PyTest coverage basically library. And our product natively understood that and used that. And actually, as it was generating tests, it was actually measuring the before and after code coverage. So if you have a similar scenario where you're using code coverage tools or libraries as part of your projects, do that. However, otherwise, we don't have a direct integration with SonarQube. One of the interesting things I haven't explored, does SonarQube actually have its own MCP servers?
Hmm.
If it does, and we could leverage information from your SonarQube deployment, that is one way we could integrate natively and something that we could explore together. So there's options, right? So definitely something worth talking about.
Is there, what is it, how do you define what a credit means? Like a 20, 250 credits is like 250 asks, or is there a different
Yeah. So it's
ratio?
basically how many API calls we're having to leverage. So every time we call a tool during a request. So for example, I'm trying to understand my code base. You actually saw an example of this earlier. I'm trying to understand how authentication is implemented in this project. It did about 4 different tool calls to be able to go ahead and actually grab all the context that it needed to be able to answer my question. That would have been like 4 credits. And so that's what the other reason why I was highlighting Codo Aware earlier. is because like to do that, like that would be like more like one credit. It's one tool call because it's able to kind of store all your context and so forth. And so any case, I think that regardless, if you look at like what we're doing for credits, even at the teams tier, like it's incredibly liberal in comparison to a lot of the competition out there. And so I think that you'll find that that is more than enough. And that developer, when you're just kind of kicking the tires, I think is actually a really good and healthy amount as well for a free tier. So hopefully that meets your needs. And again, if it doesn't, we're open to feedback. We'd love to hear from you.
One more question. This is back to the game development. What's the best way to contact you? I'm sure there's a few different ways, but about, yeah, exploring Qodo's use within the game development sphere.
Oh my goodness. You know what? I don't even, but what is the best way to contact me? You know what? I'm gonna do something dangerous. Like, could you just like post my email address into the chat like for everybody? Like just reach out to me. Like I've got the context of your request, and rather than forwarding you to some like distribution list or something like that, just reach out to me and I'll get you in contact with the right people and help you to get what you need.
That's very kind of you, very
I know,
gracious.
very, very dangerous, right? So, or
Exactly.
hit me up on LinkedIn. You see my name, it's on the screen. Like, look me up on LinkedIn, send me a LinkedIn message. Either way will work. I just want to make sure you guys are taken care of.
Is there a best way to exploit new Claude Code features like sub agents or any other unique features? Or is none of that actually needed with Qodo?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So we do so Kodo CLI does effectively have the ability to be able to use, or not Kodo CLI, sorry, we call it Kodo Command now. I called it Kodo Command earlier. We should continue to calling it Kodo Command. In any case, Kodo Command actually does leverage that similar type of functionality like Claude Code does. And then also workflows is basically what we're starting to call it, is basically very similar in that sort of vein. And in fact, we're going to be renaming in Kodo Command. We're going to be calling it workflows to match what we mentioned earlier in Kodo Gen, where we talked about workflows. Those are all going to be basically our name for effectively sub agents and being able to hand off tasks to those.
That
Um,
was, I think that's all that we have so far, the ones that I caught.
My goodness, there's so many of you, by the way, that are still here, still listening. So, like, I'm guessing I didn't bore you to death. Congratulations. And so, in any case, we are going to wrap up though. The recording, someone did ask about the recording. The recording will be posted to our YouTube channel. Go to our YouTube channel. It's Kodo on YouTube. The idea here is like go ahead and subscribe or otherwise check our YouTube channel in the near future, usually within about 24 to 48 hours, and we'll have that recording live there. And hopefully our marketing team will send out a follow-up to all of you with that. Nana, you can make sure that they do that. She works closely with our marketing team, and we will make sure that you're taken care of. So anyway, we do have to wrap up. Thank you so much for all of your wonderful questions. If there's anything that was neglected, hit us up. Happy to help. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and take care.